Many thanks for choosing us this afternoon. There's absolutely no guarantee that the nasty scenes witnessed in Parliament in December last year over the e-levy will not recur if any of the deputy speakers try to vote whilst presiding. That is the position of the minority, as both caucuses ready themselves to lock horns over the controversial subject. There were blows traded in the House the last time the House met to consider the controversial tax measure, and the scenes may be replayed if both sides do not tone down on their stance. Minority Chief Whip Muntaka Mubarak, in a yet-to-be-aired interview with Evans Mensah on PM Express, says his side will resist any attempts by the two deputy speakers to cast a vote on the e-levy if they are presiding over the House in the absence of Speaker Bagbin.
Look, it's very shameful, it's very painful, it is very unfortunate, and we keep apologizing to the extent that I even said that, look, the way we apologize, Ghanaians will not even take us seriously. As so long as people want to alter the rules, you can never guarantee that there will be no what we call confusion in the chamber. It's not possible. Because the reason is that, why will you see sometimes fists in the American Congress after over 200 years of practice? Why will you see it in the Commons? Why will you see it in other parliaments that are much, much older than ours? Anything that happens on the floor of Parliament, when it comes to its processes, it's a closed book. You can't contest it anywhere. So because of that, if you allow it to happen, that's it. You are out. So because of that, it makes it extremely difficult when the rules are being, altered to favor a certain situation.
So the point to notice, if the majority side next week, assuming the speaker goes on his review, and Joseph sits, and Joseph has already interpreted the constitution to say he can vote. Yeah. If that plays out again, that you say there are no guarantees that we can't expect disturbance on the floor.
I can bet you will resist that.
Okay.
After that, we will resist.
Every means possible?
Well, I really wish our resistance will not lead to the exchange of blows, but we will do everything to prevent that from happening. And I pray that we don't get there where it becomes necessary for us to say that we are going to resist by every means possible. It's not my prayer, but one thing that I can tell you, for a sitting speaker to be sitting there and come saying that I'm coming down to vote, that will be too difficult for our side to take. That I won't lie. I'm not a pretender. Everybody knows me. I won't sit and say that, oh, for whatever reason, we'll gloss over it. No.
Let's have a conversation on this shortly. And of course, we'll be having a political analyst and a security analyst to look into what this means to Parliament when they finally come back to that document. But let's also stay in Parliament, because the Lands and Natural Resources Minister Samuel Abujinapo says government will set up a ministerial commission of inquiry to probe the Apeatse explosion, which has so far claimed 14 lives and injured several others. In the view of the minister, the committee will also have the mandate to analyze the health and safety mechanisms of mining companies in the country and make recommendations. Mr. Jinapo spoke to the press in Parliament.
Say to you is that government is fully on top of this matter. Government is fully on top of this situation, and the president has made a commitment, and the commitment is that government is going to mobilize all the resources to support the victims and, more importantly, to reconstruct the Apeatse community and build a modern community for the people of Apeatse. And indeed, today, on the instructions of President Akufo-Addo, I inaugurated a 5-member committee to oversee the Apeatse Support Fund. We've launched the Apeatse Support Fund, which is a fund where we are going to call on Ghanaians, residents of Ghana and friends of Ghana to contribute to this fund for us to be able to raise the necessary funding to rebuild the community for the people of Apeatse. The committee is chaired by Reverend Dr. Joyce Ayi, whom we all know is a renowned, distinguished stateswoman of our country, with 4 other distinguished citizens of our country. And it's our hope and belief that this committee will work together to be able to raise the necessary funding for us to be able to reconstruct Apeatse. Finally, I should say that when these matters happen, there is also the need for the broader interrogation, the broader examination, so that we can learn the useful lessons out of the industry, the larger picture. What are the loopholes? Where do we have to tighten? The legal regime, is it sufficient? The policy regime, is it sufficient? And God willing, next week, we're going to inaugurate a ministerial committee of technocrats who are going to conduct an inquiry, not just an inquiry into this incident, but an inquiry into the whole gamut of health and safety of mining in Ghana, and not just explosives, everything to do with health and safety of mining, so that out of that we can have recommendations which will be implemented and to make our country a safe and healthy destination for mining.
That's Abojinapo, who is Minister for Lands and Natural Resources. We'll be going to Apeatse, where our man, Maxwell Agwagwa, is pitching camp, because earlier he met some chiefs of the area who also had concerns. We'll be getting reactions from there and from government on the concerns raised. But right now, let's understand what it means that the minority cannot promise that there will be peaceful deliberations over the e-levy when it comes back to the table, especially if any of the deputy speakers decide to vote. We've also heard from the majority that says they will pass the bill whether or not whether with or without the support of the NDC minority. I've been joined by a security analyst, Dr. Adam Bona, and also a senior lecturer at the Political Science Department at the Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology, Dr. Amachi Boateng. I'm grateful for your time, gentlemen. Let me start with you, Dr. Amachi. The minority says there's absolutely no guarantee that the e-levy discussion, will go on peacefully if any of the deputy speakers decide to vote. And this afternoon, we're also hearing that Alban Bagbe may not be in the seat next week because he has to go for medical checkup from next week. How does all of this come across to you?
Let me say good afternoon to your viewers and your listeners as well. And thanks for the opportunity. Actually, I don't expect anyone to be surprised by, this issue coming up the way it is. Because the main challenge that came up the last time around had to do with the issue as to whether, when it happens that the speaker is not in and any of the deputies, take over the seat, whether the person could be allowed to wear two hats, to be a speaker and at the same time a member of parliament, so that he could, if he like, chair the House and direct the affairs of the day, and at the same time, when it gets to voting, step down and then go to the floor of the Parliament and vote. You realize that there's confusion there, there's conflict there, because as a speaker, you are supposed, if you like, to really represent the whole Ghana and somehow in an apolitical fashion guide the affairs of the House. And then in the course of the same proceedings, you say that, look, I'm a member of Parliament of constituency A or B. I'm going down there to vote. There's confusion there. And when it occurred, all of us Ghanaians were interested in the physical manifestation of this conflict playing out. And we call it, came up with various captions. And then we neglected the causal element there, the causal factor, the issue as to taking a decision in the Parliament when we have that scenario. We have not addressed it. Is it in our constitution for such a speaker in that situation to wear two hats? Is it possible? In real practical terms, what is the logic behind it? The role of the speaker, who is supposed to be neutral, apolitical, who sits in there, guide the affairs of the House, and then somewhere in the line of duty, he gets down there to vote. We have not addressed that issue. And so, did anybody expect this issue to go away? I mean, in that case, it's like we're anticipating that time was going to heal that wound. It doesn't happen that way. So, I mean, in the same way that the last time around, the House could not agree. And so a conflict that was generated was not addressed. The issue still remains. It has not been addressed. So we shouldn't be surprised by this, if you like, statements coming out from any of the sides. And one interesting thing too is that you don't get any sign that any of them is ready for a compromise. Any of them is ready for some sort of accommodation, some way to cooperate and come around this challenge. So we went for a recess, we went on break, we've come down, we maintain our same old positions. Obviously, the outcome is that the conflict is going to continue to play itself out.
Dr. Bonner has also joined us. Mr. Bonner, given the nasty scenes we saw the last time this subject was on the table, what does this actually mean with the stance that both sides have taken?
Good afternoon, Aisha. For me, it looks like it's going to be chaotic once again, and that will be unfortunate. The stance both sides of the House have taken, I think, would not augur well for us as a nation, those of us who elected them to represent us in Parliament. If for nothing at all, they should take a cue from Burkina Faso that have had a military takeover. I see this as an open invitation for some intervention. But whatever intervention that is, I'm not sure, because then we expect that Parliament, as an arm of government, to be able to dialogue, negotiate, and agree on the way to go, get government business going, rather than resorting to fisticuffs and, pulling one another, tearing one another's shirt, punching, themselves in the face. This is not what we expect them to do. And so if they are talking tough, I would urge the military and the police to be on standby and invade Parliament if we see them fighting, because we elected them there. We didn't elect them there to go and disrespect the people who put them there. The executive, the Honorable Minister of Finance, has had a lot of time to dialogue. But unfortunately, I'm just hearing the dialogue and stakeholder meetings are now going to take place. What have they been doing all this while? What have they been doing? So, Aisha, for me, looking at the timing of this, statements and counter statements, it's very bad. It's not good for us as a country, as a democratic country, Aisha.
Actually, the Speaker himself yesterday, when he presided over affairs of the House, called for consensus building in the House. What happens to that consensus building with what we are hearing?
Well, I think a lot is expected from the majority side, but I haven't seen much from the majority side. I was expecting that, the long break, they would have engaged, stakeholders, they would have been a lot more education. But I haven't seen any radio, TV jingle, any airing of a sort trying to explain to us why the e-levy is so important. I haven't seen anything like that. So if they are now going to dialogue and they've already given a time frame in which that law must be passed for the e-levy to be implemented, then the question I ask is that is it as if to say that we don't care if Parliament becomes, like Buko Marina? Is that what they are saying? I think that the executive should come to the party and start doing things the right way. For me, I am disappointed in the executive in the sense that there should have been more consultation, but the minority side should not go into Parliament attempting to fight. There should be other ways of dealing with this rather than this confrontation. Because you see, Burkina Faso has just happened. Guinea took place. Mali had taken place. Let's be seen democratically to be able to govern ourselves by civilians. But what they are doing doesn't augur well for us once again, Aisha. It doesn't simply augur well. And in terms of security for the Fourth Republic, I think this is the bad time for anyone to, show that those we elected, because Parliament is one of the foundations of our democracy. So if they cannot, agree to disagree among themselves without tearing one another and attempting to hurt one another, then where else can we get this done? If we can't get it done in Parliament the right way.
Dr. Amakye, are you disappointed that, up until now, the two sides have not been able to build consensus, especially with what the Speaker himself has been championing?
Yeah, I'm so disappointed. I'm so disappointed because I am old enough to have voted for the 1992 referendum that brought into being the Fourth Republic. And so some of us would have seen how terrible things were before, the advent of the Fourth Republic took place. And so, and I don't know whether we have small boys in Parliament. I don't know whether those in Parliament, we don't have older folks in Parliament, so they don't know where we have come from. Because if they did, then they should have built consensus enough to ensure that at no point should we be seen as a nation tearing one another down. Already Baku is in turmoil. No wonder we are not talking about Baku, because we seem to have, an example, going on in Parliament where they tear one another down, beat one another. What do you expect that the people in Nima Mamobi would do? When you see the gangs in Nima Mamobi, shooting and doing things, they are learning from our MPs in Parliament. Because then, let dialogue and negotiation be how we want to live in this country, and not resort to, fisticuffs and tearing one another and punching one another. And so I am disappointed that there has not been real negotiations, consensus building, nothing. If there had been any, maybe you can tell me. You work for one of the big media houses. Tell me if there has been any dialogue. Have you been invited into any meeting that is trying to explain and trying to say this is why we intend to do this? Apart from morning shows, they appear and trying to cut one another, and it's been the same, since they went up. I thought they were behind the scene, negotiations, only to be told that, nothing has taken place among these two sides. So for me, it's, what is going on in Parliament is not so different from what took place in Nima Mamobi, what is taking place in Baku. The only thing is that these two places have not been elected. We have elected them, but unfortunately, there are certain bad examples for future generation to learn from, Aisha.
Dr. Adam, but I'll have you hold and bring in Dr. Amakye Boateng. Doc, I'm asking if you are disappointed with the kind of way we've gone about with consensus building, especially as everybody is calling on Parliament to build consensus, with the Speaker himself championing that.
Aisha, it's disappointing, and actually to say that one is disappointment is to make an understatement. The reason being that, generally speaking, politics is about conflict, taking a decision on an issue that, people obviously naturally have different positions. But then at the end of the day, if progress is to be made, if society is to move forward, then the need to find common grounds come up. This has been the situation with all societies from the time of creation to date. So that if today, in the current century, Ghana, we've come to this position that we find ourselves in, and our members of Parliament simply don't appear to have any clue as to how to go about this, then that is the real challenge. And it's unfortunate. It's unfortunate because we're perpetuating the situation where their parties enjoyed majority in the Parliament, and so anything at all that came up, went through. And let me quickly say that I don't interpret the position of the minority to be that, hey, we've gone for blows, we are going to exchange blows. No, I don't think that is what they are saying. They are saying that there's a national issue, an issue that has huge potential implications on our national life, that we are deciding we, the representatives of the people, are deciding. And we believe that the current position that the majority has taken will not inure to the benefit of Ghanaians. It will not address the common good of this country. And so we retain our positions. And that if we should find ourselves in that scenario where the speaker is not in, and then one of us goes to simply take on the role of the speaker, then the right thing should be done in a way. That is my understanding of what the opposition, the minority is saying. And interestingly, because over the years, we've all enjoyed our majority and we've operated with it, we don't think there's a need to think around the box this time around, go out there for common grounds and hear the charges on the MPP. They are the majority, they are in government, they need to lead the country. Leadership challenge critically is to provide leadership, direction for the country. So they need to go out, reach out to the minority and find ways of coming, around some common grounds. And then we will be talking of consensus and accommodation from that time onwards. That is not happening. But quickly, let me say that the current scenario we find ourselves in does not invite the police or the military into the the situation. No. Our politics is obviously unfolding, and with it comes understanding and eventually maturity. Many countries have gone this way when there's what they call a government lockdown. It manifests in several democracies. So we need to be conscious of that. And let's also draw our attention, and especially that of the military, to the fact that the military hasn't got any positive records of national development, economic growth, sustained economic growth and national development in Africa. In all the years that the military, participated in politics anywhere in Black Africa, it has never happened. They don't have any record like that. They could not even guarantee basic human rights. So they have no business thinking that the current situation is an invitation for any policeman or a military person to come in. No. No one is inviting them. We can't go on like this. And so there will be a way out. Pressure will be brought to bear, first and foremost on the MPP, the majority, to really review this e-levy thing, go in for a stakeholder approach, engage not only the minority, but greater Ghanaians, so that we all come to an understanding that basically there's a need for all of us to pay taxes. Otherwise, no country can prosper. But in paying taxes, what sort of taxes are we ready to pay? How should it be crafted out? I think they have a challenge like that. They should come down. They should come down and be like all of us and engage us.
I'm grateful for your time. Dr. Amache Boateng, Senior Lecturer at the Department of Political Science at KNUST, and Dr. Adam Bona is also a security analyst. You heard him earlier. Right now, there's something critical happening in Parliament. The members of Parliament are speaking on the Black Stars' performance at the ongoing AFCON. Let's take you to Parliament.
Our sports journalists are heaping on them. Technically, they are not there. And even for those of them who are outside, what's the quality of the teams that they are playing for? Many of them are warming the benches of second round and third round teams. And yet, we are heaping all manner of accolades on them, thereby gingering support here in Ghana. And yet we know, if we come to interrogate the competence of the players, each of them, that most of them are not up there. So we may have maybe one or two world-class players in the team. But is that enough to win tournaments? I watched just two of the games that they played. I would say to myself that the one that we lost against Comoros perhaps was our best match, even though we played shots of one person, of one player. This because so if a team is not technically sound, then we want to have good tactical play. And that then will call in question the competence or the pedigree of the coach. Mr. Speaker, the coach that we had, the question to ask is whether, as of now, he measures up there. Mr. Speaker, we've spoken about our own football development, graduating it from codes through schools and colleges, universities, the local leagues, and indeed the training facilities. Mr. Speaker, I would say to us that if we want to measure the quality of players that we have today, and we went back 20 years, most of the players that we have in the Black Stars today will not even qualify to play in the reserve teams of Accra House of Oak or Kotoko or RTU in those days. And for such, you need to bring the players together to train for a longer time than the 1 week or so that maybe we had for the team. Mr. Speaker, the efforts will not amount to much if we did that. In 1965, when we won the second time, the tournament, and we realized that we had dropped, and we needed to win in 1978, it was agreed by the then FA that we should play just one round of the league. And then we took the opportunity to assemble the team. At the time, those of them that we thought were very established stars, the Danopons and Odames of that era, were dropped. And that was how come we brought in the younger generation, took them to Brazil. They camped them there for about 2.5 months. They came to play the local league, the local clubs. I remember the second match that they played against Defense Stars. It was difficult for them to win. Then we realized that, yes, we were trying to shape them up. They were not up there. They went back. When they came back, they played the same Defense Stars and humiliated them. And realized that we had been able to get the team to some level. So into the 1978 tournament, which was played in Ghana, we were very hopeful. And indeed, all the teams that we met were able to overcome them. In 1992, when, again, for a long time, we were not making much progress. After the humiliation, when the trophy in Libya in 1982. Between it and 1982, it was difficult for us. We were not even qualified. Then we introduced Bukar Saizi. We must look at the coaches that we also engage. Bukar, when he came, was a very hungry coach. We left the entire team to his charge and was able, within a very short time, to bring them up. That is how we should be scouting. If you are going for foreign coaches, those are the type of coaches, the hungry ones, who want to add to their CV, that you should be bringing. Not established ones. The established ones, when you bring them, they will not be able to deliver, and they will tell you that, well, we had very little time. Mr. Speaker, the same thing goes when Nigeria, for instance, went to the World Cup and did very well. That was when they introduced Clemens Westerhoff, a very hungry coach. They brought him. The first match that he played, in fact, he went with them to Algeria. The first match they played, they were humiliated by Algeria. But Nigeria managed to play in the finals against the same Algeria. Algeria at the time, Shildon, Rabah Majer, and the others. It was difficult for Algeria to beat Nigeria in the final game. They managed only a 1-0 against Nigeria. Then the people of Nigeria got to know that, yes, this man within a very short time was mastering the gameplay of Nigeria. He took them to the World Cup. They did well. When Cameroon went to the World Cup with Roger Miller, and did well, As we recollect that they came to Ghana. At the time, we didn't have a blaster. And they played against our under 17. At that time, Frode Shabokwe, Ablarikuma, Joe Debra, Zion Train, and the others. They played them in Kumasi. They struggled to draw with our under 17 team. That was when they went to the World Cup. Richard Miller said, when people were praising Cameroon for what they had done, he said the world should watch out for Ghana. The Speaker, go for hungry coaches. Cameroon at the time went for an unsung coach, Nepomniachtchi, who took them to the World Cup. When they finished, the Soviet Union at the time poached him because of the gameplay that is placed there. Mr. Speaker, so it is what quality of coach that we want. If you're not going for the hungry ones, and my first preference is for local coaches, Mr. Speaker, you can put maybe some of them together, 2 or 3, the established ones, and you can even give it to the Coaches Association, that they should give us 2 or 3 of their best, put them together to coach the national team, and we see the results. Mr. Speaker, I think there's also a question that we have to ask ourselves. Since the FA, the Football Association, came to be taken over by the clubs, what has been the results? Is that the way to go? Before they came in, we had our own structure of technical people managing the Football Association for us. The football clubs have insisted that they dominate. Ever since they took control, what has been the results in tournaments? And that's when people even question the selection process into the national teams. Because each of them will want to have their own players from their clubs in the national team. What has been the results to us? Mr. Speaker, so there are so many questions that we should be asking about what went wrong. And indeed, as I've said, I agree that yes, today we don't have the big corporate bodies to be assisting in grooming players. The era of Samatex, the era of new plan stars, Akoshobo testers that produce architects, even from Akujeto's place, Drontex, Japan testers, they have gone. Dumas of GTP used to be one of the clubs. Georg Stars, Stiaman Stars, Ash Gold, and even from the armed forces, Defense Stars, later christened SS-74. Where are they? Mr. Speaker, so we should look at how we are developing our football. We need really to have long-term strategic plans to reinvigorate our football. Mr. Speaker, for now, I agree with the minority leader that we don't have the luxury of time. If we have to compete in the World Cup qualifiers, we need immediately to determine the way forward for us. If we have to sack the coach, let it be swift. To introduce new coaches who then will have at least 5 weeks or so to get the team together. If, on the other hand, we want to leave him, then scurrilous attacks should also cease, because that will also demoralize the man. My own preference, though, is that the 2 Ghanaian coaches who are outside. Tanko is the deputy coach to Dortmund, and his pedigree is high. Ibrahim Tanko. Mr. Speaker, so if we have to give the blasters to him, I believe he's one person who can deliver for us. But let's handle the matter gingerly. And I think, I understand the FA's meeting tomorrow. If they have to get rid of Milo because maybe he's wounded and his crest is falling. Let's do what is needful. Bring in the other another coach. Now I'm saying that my own preference is to bring down Tanko. The Speaker, having said that, we should come together not to stop supporting the Black Stars. We have bemoaned the fate of the Black Stars, and I guess so many of our compatriots are not in the mood to even continue watching that is the extent of injury that has been inflicted on all of us football lovers in the country. That means that we should revamp the Stars. If we have to invite some new people into the team, so be it. So, the Speaker, the earlier we acted with some degree of alacrity to save the fortunes of the Black Stars, the better for us. Let me also urge those of them who contributed to the journey to Cameroon not to relent, because we need to continue our support for the team if indeed we want to maintain them, or if we want to call a halt to our participation in World Cup or perhaps tournaments, then we must make that bold decision. Other than that, Mr. Speaker, I believe the time to continue the support of the Black Stars is still on, and we must get actually in order not to have another disaster in March. Mr. Speaker, I thank you very much for the opportunity.
Very well, Honourable Minister.
Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity to contribute to the statement made by the Ranking Member for Youth and Sports Committee, Honourable Wayomi, MP for South Tonk, on the performance of our Black Stars. Mr. Speaker, I wish to commend my Ranking Member for this statement and also thank honourable members for their contributions to the Ministry of Youth and Sports and the stakeholders in the sports industry, especially football. Mr. Speaker, there is no doubt that the Ghanaian people, and for that matter, the government, is disappointed about the outcome of the AFCON campaign currently ongoing. Mr. Speaker, the Ghanaian people have a right, because if there is any one thing that unites this our great country called Ghana, then, Mr. Speaker, is sports, and in particular football. And that is why I share their disappointment about this AFCON campaign. Mr. Speaker, the African Cup of Nations is the most prestigious football competition in Africa, where member states are represented by their teams, and it is organized by the Confederation of the African Football, CAF. Mr. Speaker, Ghana qualified for the AFCON, or the African Cup of Nations, for a record 9th time, and was set to battle other African countries in this continental showpiece, scheduled in Cameroon from the 9th January 2022 to 6th February. Mr. Speaker, knowing the huge task ahead of us as far as football is concerned,
so you have the members of Parliament actually commenting on the performance of the Black Stars at the ongoing AFCON 2021. Now, it is estimated that the economic cost and burden of smoking in Ghana is nearly 100 million Ghana cedis, making it a major public health threat. What will be an ideal strategy to stop or reduce tobacco smoking in the country? This morning, the Ghana Revenue Authority, the Food and Drugs Authority, the Tax Justice Network, the Vision for Alternative Development, VILD, as well as other stakeholders met at a forum to discuss strategies to make tobacco use unattractive. Key among the solutions was increased taxation on cigarettes and other tobacco products. But what is the guarantee that people won't find a way around this? In the studio with me is Labaram Musa. He's the Executive Director in charge of Programs and Vision for Alternative Development and the National Coordinator of the Ghana Non-Communicable Disease Alliance. I'm grateful that you could make it to the studio, Mr. Labaram.
Thank you so much for having me.
So let's look at the objective of this forum you had today. What's the objective?
Well, so thank you very much. Indeed, we felt that there was a need for us to have a national discourse to discuss how, as a country, we want to proceed with the issues of tobacco in the country. Because we thought that tobacco is a menace, it's a killer, it has no known benefit whatsoever, and then to kill and destroy, and then, even make people homeless. So we thought that, and this has been going on for many years. We have been making efforts, through, a lot of interventions, one-on-one engagement, but there's a need for that kind of broader stakeholder consultation so that we can all meet together and then have that kind of, frank discussion among ourselves.
So you met people from GRA, you met people from Tax Network, you also met people from FDA. What are their positions on this?
Okay, so indeed, let me say that there has been a lot of support with respect to, increasing taxes. In fact, the focus of this program was to increase taxes on tobacco products because we thought that that's one of the most effective means of reducing consumption of tobacco products, and then also serve as a revenue stream for government. That's why you find the GRA and the Ministry of Finance also being interested in this program because, we thought that there's an opportunity for us to also look for an untapped avenue where government can also get some revenue to help in the development of the country. So, and there was a lot of buy-in from almost all stakeholders, and to the extent that the GRA has kind of promised that they're going to have that kind of discussion so that together we can see how we can proceed. Indeed, let me say that since 2015, there hasn't been any tax increment on tobacco products, and this has led to the low cost of tobacco in the country. So when you go around the country, you find cigarettes products very cheap in the market. So if you have close 20 pesos to 30 pesos, you can buy a stick of cigarettes, to smoke. In the same vein, a pack of 10 cigarettes can cost you about 2 cedis. And what is 2 cedis in Ghana today? Elsewhere, cigarette has been, it's one of the most expensive products. Okay. But when it comes to Ghana and other part of the country, other part of the developing countries, cigarette products are very, very cheap. So we're looking at how do we, as a country, look at how do we increase, but we're not just looking at increment tobacco products. We're looking at changing the tax regime because research shows that the current tax regime we are using, which is the ad valorem tax system, it is not helping. So even when we increase tobacco by even 20%, still the price will remain cheaper in the market because the industry has devised so many strategies, including absorbing the price difference, so the price will remain the same in the market without any effect. Or sometimes there's a saying that they also try to alter the products by putting or coming up with inferior commodity. And the point is already the commodity is dangerous, and now you want to now kind of. So these are all indications that the industry is very much interested when it comes to issue of taxation, and they try to ensure that countries like Ghana and other developing countries will continue to use a tax regime that will not help to raise the tax burden on tobacco products.
But what's the guarantee that imposing more taxes would actually reduce or scare people from using tobacco products?
That's why I said earlier that even when we increase tobacco, the current tax regime is a problem. That's why we thought that there's a need for us to come together, including GRA. Okay. So once GRA is on board and they've bought into the idea, because all this while, from 2015, they've been talking about the fact that we need statistics, we need evidence. Okay. So the evidence was actually developed last year we spent a lot of time and energy, and we came out with this document, The Economics of Tobacco in Ghana. So this is looking at, the ecosystem of tobacco in the country, looking at what are some of the effects and what are some of the best strategies, including best world practices that Ghana can also learn from, especially in Kenya, in Kenya, in Gambia, in Rwanda. They have put together a very good tax system that is helping to reduce the prevalence of smoking and its related diseases, like non-communicable diseases, that is afflicting us, as a country. Because we are told that 94,400 people die from tobacco-related, I'm talking about non-communicable diseases. And tobacco is one of the major risk factors for all the non-communicable diseases that we know. But the point is that this commodity has no benefit. So why don't you look for a way of disincentivizing, the public, especially the youth and the poor? Because research also shows that, the taxes that they impose on tobacco is actually to protect the young ones and the poor. Who are, because if you have 20 pesos, the rich man will not bother about 20 pesos, but the commodity is so cheap, they're saying that children will now be, be initiating their habits, and also to be enticing to use the product. And eventually, once you start using the product at the teen age, then you become hooked to tobacco. The industry would not, and their interest is not on those who are already smoking. The interest is how do we get new clients, the young ones and those who have not smoked before. And that's why the attention has been on the shisha, because they come out with so many attractive commodities to attract the young ones, especially the university students. That's why we see shisha all over the place. The commodities are dangerous, as we all know. But the point is that because of the way it has been fashioned, it has been designed, so it's so attractive. And we are told that our ladies are going into it more than even the male counterparts. Research is showing that the percent of women who are into shisha is higher than that of men. It's all because the product is attractive. To what extent? Because the price is also very, very good, very, very affordable. So we are calling for an increment, but not just increment, looking at how do we change the tax regime. So that's a conversation we are currently having with.
But why don't you call for a complete ban if you actually admit that it has it's weighing down the economy?
Right, see, this discussion have come up several times, and I think at the global level, there are discussions on the end game. They call the end game. How do we end tobacco product? But policymakers will tell you that it's good to regulate a commodity than to put an outright ban on it. Because then when we put an outright ban on it, then it becomes extremely very difficult to regulate or to be able to because of issue of smuggling and all of those things. But the point is that there are efforts by the WHO and other war-meaning countries to see how we can end tobacco and its related, but currently, as we speak now, no country have been able to ban tobacco. What we are trying to do is that how do we ensure that we regulate it to the extent that we also benefit from it, so that the point is that if somebody is selling something, you don't buy it, definitely he will close up his business. But they have the money. I mean, it's a multi-billion, company. So they are able to invest a lot of resources to see how they can attract people to still smoke the commodity. And I always say that it's one of the evil commodity that the world has ever produced. Because why do you produce a commodity, that stick of cigarette? It consists about 7,000 chemicals. That commodity alone. Apart from the fact that the commodity is coming from a plant called Nicotiana tabacum. That particular plant already has some chemicals. Then they inject so many chemicals into it. And all those chemicals are very hazardous to every part of the human body. So the point is that it is not any commodity that we should glorify or play around it. We should take a very bold step as a country to see how best we can reduce the extent to which people are smoking, and also see how we can get some revenue, because the industry will say that no matter how you increase, people will still smoke. No problem. Let them smoke so that we also get revenue from it. At least when people now fall sick, they get the cancers, the heart diseases. When they go to the hospital, we can compensate them with the taxes that they are paid, to take care of them. Because currently, the healthcare cost is just too much for the country.
So how do you intend to implement the recommendations from this forum? Well,
so the recommendation actually is for us to ensure that government implements them. So there's going to be some in-house one-on-one meetings with the Ministry of Finance and the Ministry of and GRA, because they are the main tax policy, institutions in the country. We are looking at how do we ensure that we get a policy framework that would change the tax regime from where we are to either a specific tax or to a mixture of the two, specific and ad valorem, because there has been so many directives from the WHO and then also from ECOWAS that a mixture of the two, which we are recommending, is the best way to go for many countries, including Ghana.
Okay. I wish you all the best in this endeavor. Definitely, it's something that you are passionate about. And so when is this meeting coming on?
Well, so this meeting has been scheduled for next week and then the weeks ahead. And hopefully we would ensure that the media is also involved so that we can continue to promote this advocacy. But we all need to ensure that we reduce this. I'm
grateful for your time. Labram Musa is the Executive Director of the Vision for Alternative Development and the National Coordinator of the Ghana Non-Communicable Disease Alliance. Still to come on the polls, as traditional rulers demand impartial probe into Apeatse disasters, government is assuring ongoing investigations into the explosion will conclude in a manner that satisfies survivors and get their lives back on track. Welcome back to the pause. Let's stay on health a while longer because on Sunday, Ghana will join the world to celebrate or mark World Neglected Tropical Diseases Day. Neglected tropical diseases, or NTDs, are a group of about 20 parasitic and bacterial diseases which affect about 1.7 billion people in about 149 of the poorest countries in Africa, Asia, and Latin America. These diseases include trachoma, intestinal worms, river blindness, bilharzia, elephantiasis, sleeping sickness, Buruli ulcer, leprosy, yaws, and many others. Most of these diseases do not kill but produce debilitating effects, including disfigurement and disability on patients. They are associated with poverty and intense stigmatization. Let's have a broader discussion on this one. And in the studio with me is David Ajiman. He's Senior Programs Manager with Sight Savers. I'm grateful for your time, Mr. Ajiman. Let's look at this year's theme. What's the theme for celebration this year?
The theme for this year's celebration is Achieving Health Equity to End the Neglect of Poverty-related diseases. Okay.
So if you talk about neglected tropical diseases, what are we talking about?
Okay, so neglected tropical diseases are about 20 diseases. And when we say neglected tropical diseases, actually an umbrella name that we use for all these 20 diseases. Okay. And they affect about 1.7 million people in the world. About 149 countries are affected. These are diseases that affect people that live in rural communities, very remote areas, and usually people who are affected by poverty. So these are neglected tropical diseases.
Okay. Now, so why are they neglected?
They are neglected for about two major reasons. The first one is that because the effect is not immediately realized. When you get malaria today, now, the next few hours, you realize the impact. And you will die if you don't do anything about it. But for neglected tropical diseases, if you get it, you might not have any symptoms. Usually, it will take a long time before you see it. Because the impact is usually not seen immediately, the world is neglecting it because we are not seeing the impact. Now, another reason also is that the people who are affected by these diseases are usually the poor, as I mentioned earlier. And the developed countries, most of them have eliminated these diseases. So they are not putting in the effort that they need to, because they themselves are not affected.
Let's talk about the state or the situation, the current situation with neglected tropical diseases. I mean, we've heard about bilharzia, elephantiasis, and all of that as part of the 20 neglected tropical diseases you talk about. What's our current situation when it comes to these neglected tropical diseases?
Thank you very much. Ghana has made tremendous progress with the elimination of neglected tropical diseases. We eradicated guinea worm in 2015, and in 2018 we eliminated trachoma. Then we have also made huge progress with the other diseases. For example, now nobody gets blind from river blindness. In the past, people were going blind because of river blindness, but because of the work we've done over the years, nobody is getting blind from that. We used to get a lot of people with lymphedema, those with large limbs, you know. Today, if you see anybody with that condition, the person got infected many years ago. People are not getting, you know, that condition now because of the work we've done. Of the 114 districts that are endemic for lymphatic filariasis, now we have just 11 of them. We still have transmission above the elimination threshold. So much has been achieved when it comes to neglected tropical disease elimination in Ghana.
So now we are talking about also poverty and neglected tropical diseases. Is there a correlation?
Yeah, very much, because neglected tropical disease actually creates poverty. For example, if you look at, let's take someone who gets blind from river blindness, for example. Okay. The person cannot, you know, be productive as he or she would have been if he had not been blind. And usually what will happen is that a child will be pulled out of school to go and take care of this person, maybe a parent, father or mother. So the child can also not go to school, and because of that, she will also become poor in the future, and then the cycle continues. We can also even look at intestinal worms. Okay. If students get intestinal worms, it will impact on their health. They will become anemic, and so they wouldn't be able to achieve what they are expected to achieve in school, to impact on their studies.
Quite interesting that you also talked about the progress we've made so far, but I mean, what's the plan to actually improve on our situation?
So that is why this World NTD Day, for example, is important. We are calling on the world, we are calling on our leaders in this country, we are calling on the private sector, we are calling on everyone to come and support neglected tropical disease. Okay. Because even though we have made progress, there's still so much to be done. Okay. And there are some diseases that we actually haven't gone anywhere. You look at schisto, for example, bilharzia. You know, it's all over this country, and people still have it. And so are other diseases. And even those that we've made progress, we haven't eliminated them. So we need everybody's support. So funding, you know, for us to achieve sustainability with neglected tropical disease elimination, we need local funding, and the government and everyone in Ghana should support that.
Is there any effect of like COVID-19 on these neglected tropical diseases?
Yeah. I would say that COVID-19 is making the elimination more expensive. Okay. Because now we need extra money to protect people who go out to, provide the NTD interventions. We have to buy PPEs for them, you know, and so on. Also, neglected tropical diseases, the attention that we used to have we are no longer having it to some extent because COVID is now taking all the attention.
Okay.
For example, we're supposed to launch this NTD Day on the 31st. But 31st is when they are launching the COVID-19 vaccine week. So we have to postpone ours to the 1st. So you see that COVID-19 is actually taking the attention, getting more attention.
That's quite interesting. And you are calling on all stakeholders to come on board so we can have this this disease, dealt with. But what specifically do you recommend that we do as a people at the government level, at the individual level, to ensure that we help deal with the situation?
Okay, thank you very much. So let me speak to colleagues who live in the endemic communities. One of the things that we want people living in the endemic communities of Ghana to do is to accept the neglected tropical disease interventions. Most importantly, the drugs that we distribute, the mass drug administration. So if some of these colleagues are listening to us, please accept the drugs when they bring it to you. For the government, we are calling for the government to provide, to earmark funding for neglected tropical diseases.
Okay.
Many years ago, I used to work for Ghana Health Service for guinea worm eradication. And if you look at the guinea worm eradication data, you realize that we started making progress most when government put in money, when government earmarked funding for that disease. Now, neglected tropical diseases is just donor-driven, entirely, almost, So we need government to come in. But we also need the private sector to come in, because we cannot alleviate poverty without the elimination of neglected tropical disease.
I'm grateful for your time, David Ajiman. David Ajiman is the Senior Programs Manager at Site Savers. I'm grateful that we were able to make it. We can now go to Apeatse, because this afternoon government is urging calm among residents of that community who were rendered homeless by the explosion that killed 14 people. Lands and Natural Resources Minister Samuel Abujinapo says a 3-tier investigation is currently ongoing will unravel circumstances leading to the unfortunate incident. Scores of residents of the Western Regional town remain homeless and yet to recover from the shock of the traumatic incident that occurred almost a week ago. Lands and Natural Resources Minister Abujinapo says restoring survivors to decent livelihood remains the goal of government. He spoke on the Super Morning Show. Our man, Maxwell Agbagba, tells a story also of a 1-month-old baby who miraculously escaped death after a building collapsed on her.
Baby Abna crying as a mother, Janet Amate, tries to lull her to sleep. Janet is waiting for the medical team at the St. Michael's Catholic Church to dress her baby's wounds. Injuries she sustained after she was pulled from the collapsed building. Her mother tells me she was washing outside when the explosion happened. She says she was at home washing when they were alerted to switch off all the electrical gadgets. Shortly after that, the explosion happened. She says her daughter got injured after the building collapsed on her, with a structure also engulfed by fire. Baby Abna's grandmother, Abna Jisiwa, says they lost everything after Thursday's explosion. She says life will not be the same after they leave the shelter. She was at the farm when the incident happened. She sells underwears, noodles at night, and also a farmer. She says they lost everything after the explosion and need support. money for food will be a problem when they leave the shelter. The Psychiatric Association of Ghana on Monday conducted a mental health assessment of the affected persons. Amongst others, its preliminary findings revealed children who reportedly scream at night and children who have gone mute since the explosion. The association is calling on Ghanaians to put resources together to avert what it describes as a potential mental health catastrophe in Apeatse.
Lands and Natural Resources Minister Samuel Abujinapo says restoring survivors to decent livelihood remains the goal of government.
Abanyahwe atoto a aban gusu edi se adwuma no eno na di kan na ne etoso mienu ene se ye beye mpensempensemu ne aye nhwehwemu ne yehu ne kure a ewo asemnim eba ne sen ana atrenchen kese sei esiye hwan ena ye na adwuma hwan na anye na adwuma hwan na ese ye de sobo obono hwan na enisi ye de sobo obono Bruni Bekase investigations. Na sa investigation ni sa pensempensemu no so no. Ebetima ye pensempensemu bebre. Ni edi kan police for betima ebe ye omode. Ghana Fire Service for be ye omode. Minerals Commission for asoye ehye me masisi. Omoso ye omode. Ye sa pensempensemu nyina awia. Ene ebehu ne kora ewom nam se ne munyina amutie FM radio for we say ne siye we say ne siye we si kofa ba ye ni we si we ne kofa ba ye si ebe hu ne esi titiriu a na ebe gina nhwehwemu no na wieye e na ebe kire ne esiye na nhwehwemu bia si ni ho a ebe timi akoso a ebe wonyina so a 7 prediasa o nana ene amanfo no ene apiatefo no yen tie monumusem se nhwehwemu bi si na si yen tie monumusem a 7 predias a megidi sense sanhwehwemu no na enwie periye ena amene mo kasai yate ekuo kakra omoba mukuru mu hanom eye nhwehwemu no nyina echi omoba be bisa nsem na omba be fefe nsem mu na enche nhwehwemu no susuanso nyina ba bedadi na nyina ehu ni kure sina na ekan police escort na wo ho no ni ho oteka ni mu oteka be ni mu nhwehwemu no be yi nyina beda ni nyina adi na omo ne na naso be di nkita ho na nimdie ne kura na nawo efa asem ne hu nyina no ebe pia abonten enne toso mienu na ne toso miensa ne etwa to ene ne eno nti na ne yaba hei ne toso miensa no ene se aba ne sei no President Akufo-Addo de asi ne boso odi asi wo waka to ho de asi wo omampanyin sei mukuru no obehwe esia mam na obehwe esia mam so a na ejina se aban aso ya ehwe adan sie so na ehwe se dibre so ne sa adwumadie so ye Minister for Works and Housing and the Ministry of Works and Housing no mene no be ye adwuma na adisuadu hu ne botaya omampanyin di asi nani so no na abam eno ana ekofa ase enra omampanyin ema yeti bibia ye frɛ no Apeatse support fund me se mo te honka Apeatse support fund na mo amotu dada say mo bie bank account or commercial bank any other banks ne mo ankasa so no mo akora mo ho a mo a efri miamia ba nyina mo gi a mo hwe say mo de be ye adwuma kwan papa so no na me hye da abom abaso na aban bom abaso me so me bom abaso say aban kora beba be ne de no mo tu anamo aye bibi kakra dada eno ana me gidi say ahemfo nyina ese ye de edusua de ye adwuma nti eno no ye bom abaso na sa fund na yate no kuo abata akese ganafo amanonefo
You heard the Lands and Natural Resources Minister Samuel Abuji Napo assuring the people of Apeatse, the victims involved, that they will actually make life meaningful to them again. And he's also been assuring the chiefs and people over there that this will not recur. There were concerns raised by the chiefs over there. He also had responses for those concerns. We'll bring you that, but he has assured that the investigations into what caused the explosion will be comprehensive and fair. You can listen to the minister once more.
First of all, to get a sense of the situation on the ground for purposes of the reconstruction of this community. And as you can see, we've had a very fruitful tour and engagement with the community members. I must report very quickly that it's very refreshing and encouraging that the State Housing Company seems to have done some considerable work already, including the assembling of inventory of the structures we are dealing with. Essentially, President Akufo-Addo is committed that government will take the necessary steps to reconstruct the Apeatse community. And as you know, yesterday, on its instructions, I launched the Apeatse Support Fund, which is to raise the requisite resources to support the community members, as well as be used for the reconstruction of this community. And therefore, we are very excited to be here, and we've done some very good work. The minister who is responsible for housing has had a good sense of what is at stake. And from here, we will put in place the necessary framework and mechanism to move forward with the steps towards the reconstruction of this community. What is important, what I have to emphasize, is that government is extremely committed to unleash the necessary responses to this disaster, because this is a government that is determined to rebuild this community, support the community members, and make sure that the situation here is returned to normalcy. With these words, I'll call my colleague, the Works and Housing Minister, to say a few words.
When is the reconstruction work starting? Are we seeing any work starting anytime soon?
We will have to go about this professionally and go about this systematically. And we have to use the necessary experts and get a proper understanding and get proper briefing and advice, expert advice from the necessary experts. I think the first step is what we have done. We've been here ourselves. The next step will be assembling the experts and getting the experts to develop a roadmap, a pathway for us to be able to engage in the reconstruction of this community.
Minister, I know your ministry, together with the security agencies, commenced investigations into what led to this disaster. The chief, a while ago, expressed concern about the information that the security agencies have. What sort of personal advice or assurance you want to give to the people that we are going to ensure, a fair investigation into this matter?
The investigations will be fair, to be comprehensive, and it will be anchored on integrity. Let's wait for the outcome of the investigations.
Well, the very last question, please. Maxim Company Limited, which was shut down by the Reconstruction Commission just some days ago, we were told that Ghana Chamber of Mines actually said that it's going to lose $1.75 million weekly in royalties because Maxim supplies about 40% of the explosives used in Ghana's mining industry, and it's likely to affect mining.
I had a meeting with the chamber, and the chamber brought this matter to my attention. They've since written to my office. It's a very important factor that we have to consider in the decisions we take moving forward. We need to assemble the basic facts before we can take a decision as to whether to lift the ban or not. And the Minerals Commission is engaged in that work. Let's give ourselves a few days. Minister.
Much offense for the media. As you know, this is a follow-up visit to the one that was made by the Vice President and other government officials. Government has committed to reconstruct this city, this town, and as Minister for Western Housing, it's our responsibility to follow up and take the necessary action. I've had opportunity to monitor what has gone on here in Apeatse, in the news, on television. So it was important that I follow up to have a first-hand understanding of what has happened. And I say, to my astonishment, it's more devastating than what we saw on television. And that has reinforced our commitment, especially from the Ministry of Works and Housing, to reconstruct this town. I came with officials from LUPSA, which is the old land use spatial planning, the old town and country planning, officials from state housing, and officials from the Department of Rural Housing. LUPSA's duty will be to help us develop the layout planning scheme for this area. As you know, like many other communities, what you see is haphazard development, not a well planned scheme. But once government is coming in to reconstruct, it's important that you do things in the way that befits the community. And also state housing is the state developer into construction and management of estates. So they will be responsible for that. But what is also interesting is that this is a pretty small rural community, and there is a department under our ministry called Department of Rural Housing that advise government on what kind of appropriate technology that is best fit for housing development in such small towns like Apeatse. So we, as the ministry, we are going to coordinate and mobilize all these relevant state institutions to come out with a world.
Let's take you now to Germany, where thousands of people have been protesting, but also in other countries against COVID-19 measures, in particular, the possibility of a vaccine mandate. Thomas Sparrow of our partners, VW, is joining us now. Thomas, what is the protest about and why?
Over 70,000 people reportedly protested this week in various German cities to vent their frustrations over Germany's coronavirus policies and, in particular, over the possibility of a mandatory coronavirus vaccine. In some cities, counter-demonstrations have also taken place, and these are not isolated incidents. Protests have actually been happening regularly. Most of them have been peaceful, but there has been violence in some cases, and police has had to intervene, for example, when people have ignored coronavirus protocols. Many of those attending these protests are fiercely against compulsory vaccinations and general COVID restrictions. But authorities are also concerned about demonstrations being infiltrated by far-right extremist groups and gatherings turning more and more aggressive. Authorities have also pointed out that these protesters are a minority and that most Germans are actually following coronavirus rules and recommendations.
So, Thomas, how divisive is the vaccine mandate proposal?
Many would indeed argue that these regular protests reveal how coronavirus regulations, and especially the possible vaccine mandate issue, are splitting society among those who believe mandates are necessary to end the pandemic, especially as German authorities want more people to get the jab, and those who argue that mandates infringe on citizens. It is a highly controversial issue, and various polls have revealed that a majority of Germans have actually changed their mind. Whereas in the past they were against a mandate, now about 2/3 are in favour. New German Chancellor Olaf Scholz is also among those who favour a mandate, and he has stressed that he doesn't believe the country is divided. Having different opinions, he said, does not equal division. All this is happening as Germany logs record numbers of infections, over 100,000 a day for the first time, and with about 20% of the population still unvaccinated.
So what's the situation in other EU countries?
Well, a possible vaccine mandate is an issue which will be decided here in Germany by Parliament and not by the government. And other European countries are having similar debates, whether to impose a general mandate or one only for certain age groups or professions. Austria, for example, is expected to have a vaccine mandate for all adults as of next month. Italy and Greece have imposed mandates for older people. Poland and the Czech Republic have decided on compulsory vaccinations for certain professions like police officers or medical workers. Other countries, however, have indicated they want to keep vaccinations voluntary.
Thomas Farr is with our partners DW in Berlin, but from Berlin back to Ghana and still talking about vaccination. Pregnant women in Ashanti region to receive COVID-19 vaccines, immune boosters introduced. The Ashanti Regional Health Directorate has begun the administration of COVID-19 vaccines to pregnant women. Immune boosters shots have also been introduced to curtail spread and harmful effects of COVID-19 on pregnant women and the general public. There's more in the following report.
The initial rollout of COVID-19 vaccines in Ghana excluded pregnant women, which health experts say was premised on skepticism. However, recent local and international findings have confirmed the vaccines are safe to be administered to pregnant women. Speaking at a press conference, Ashanti Regional Director of Health Service, Dr. Emmanuel Tinkrine, allayed fears associated with pregnant women being vaccinated and encouraged expectant mothers to visit various centers for their jab.
Now, evidence have shown that we can immunize pregnant women. And because when they are pregnant, their immunity is quite low. It means that if you have a privilege and the risk is very low, and you immunize pregnant women, it will be better. From evidence-based or from our scientific knowledge, we now know that the vaccine is safe for pregnant women. So nobody should think of abortion, miscarriage, and other things. It may be coincidental. You may take the vaccine and you may abort. Sometimes abortion happens spontaneous, but don't associate it with the vaccine. On the other hand, if you take the vaccine and you have any reaction, the first thing you have to do is to report to the nearest healthcare facility.
Assuring the safety of the vaccines, Dr. Tinkrine underscored expectant mothers can receive Pfizer and Moderna vaccines.
We are recommending Moderna and Pfizer for the pregnant women. And then the first dose will be given as early as possible in pregnancy. And then the second dose will follow that of the general population.
Dr. Tinkrine indicated the Health Directorate has initiated a booster policy for persons who have completed their primary vaccination 3 to 6 months ago. The targeted category includes persons with underlying health issues, health workers, persons aged 60 years and above, security personnel, and members of the various arms of government.
We know that immunity for COVID-19 usually wanes. So when you take the vaccine, from 3 months to 6 months, you realize that the immunity will drop a bit. And for that reason, for the high-risk group, we are starting the booster vaccination for them. We will give the booster dose 3 months to 6 months after the second dose.
From Kumasi for JoyNews, Emmanuel Bright-Kweku reporting.
So we are live on the polls, and if you are just joining, you can also log on to all our social media handles. It's on JoyNews on TV. Let's take a break, and when we return, we'll bring you all the latest from the sports world.
Welcome to the sports segment live here on the JoyNews Pulse with me, Oriko Ampofo. And as usual, and as we've been doing in the past month or so, we're looking at the Africa Cup of Nations. Currently, Ivory Coast themselves are in a crying tie against Egypt. Probably a final before the final, but one of them would be dropping from the competition in just over an hour. So we're approaching halftime. It's 0-0 between both teams, and joining me in the studio to do some discussions around the Africa Cup of Nations is Joel Botte. Joel, 0-0 between Ivory Coast and then Egypt. Both teams probably coming from contradicting perspectives coming into the round of 16. Ivory Coast very full in confidence, finding their form, beating Algeria. Egypt, not the best of performances against Nigeria, but they've grown slowly with 2 consecutive 1-0 wins. Who are you going for in terms of the winner of the match today?
With this game, I believe Ivory Coast, in my opinion, have the upper hand against Egypt. If you look at how Ivory Coast have played throughout the competition, you could tell that they look like a team that's looking to win the title. They've played with good chemistry. They've had a lot of communication on field. They've shown that tactical approach towards games that they look like they know what they're about. If you look at their first 2 games in the group stages, you notice that they played with inverted fullbacks, pushing into the middle and allowing the wide players to enjoy the wide areas, for example, Pepe. And you can tell that Pepe is enjoying his time on the flanks because he has 2 goals and an assist, if I'm right. So with that, you can see that the Ivorians know what they're about on the field, and they're not giving opportunities to these other countries to enjoy possession and enjoy the game. With Egypt, I believe they are relying more on Salah. I noticed that with this game, they've changed their approach and they are going with a 4-3-3 instead of their 3-4-3. And that allows them to use the other players like Mohamed at attack, along with Mohamed Salah. And that's good because then you allow Salah to enjoy the possession on the wide areas and attack, which he's good at. So I believe that with this game, I'm still tipping Ivory Coast, but I think Egypt still stand an opportunity in there.
Okay, we can show you the lineups of both teams. Still 0-0, almost halftime in that fixture between the two sides. And as Joey rightly mentioned, Egypt's lineup in a 4-3-3 formation. Mohamed Salah would be expected to lead the lines. But as we look at this lineup, Joey, speaking of Salah, pre-match he said that he came close in 2017 where Abubakar denied him that Africa Cup of Nations trophy. Yeah. This is one trophy that he would hold dearly to his heart. Do you think he and Egypt have what it takes to go all the way?
Well, looking at the squad, I believe with how Egypt recruits their players, they don't focus mainly on foreign players. They look at their local leagues and incorporate that with their stars, and that's Salah. We've seen El Neni in there, and I believe he's starting as we speak. He's been good for the team, but I don't think Egypt, the whole team stands out. Mm-hmm. They look more to Salah as the main man, but I don't think they have the chance to win the title this year. Maybe in the coming years, but not this year.
That's definitely something that Mohamed Salah wouldn't want to hear. But let's look at the broader perspective of the Africa Cup of Nations. 13 red cards shown so far. That's the same number that we've seen in the last 4 tournaments combined. That is absurd, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It is. And interestingly, it's just when we incorporated the VAR, the video assistant referee, and we've seen more decisions go to that, and it's been a problem. Some say the way Africans play is more physical, and therefore some of these challenges or tackles should be allowed. But I mean, some players are coming from the middle part of their leagues, and you don't want a player going back to their league or club injured. That would be a disaster for them and the club as well. So I believe that we've seen these things just as a result of what we know to be standards of officiating. Aside that, I think it's okay.
Well, so far we've not seen any red card in this game. The record prior to this match was that in every knockout game that we have seen, there has been at least 1 red card. In fact, in the match between Senegal and Cape Verde, there were 2 red cards going to one team, that's Cape Verde, who ended the game with 9 men. But let's quickly look at Ivory Coast and how they line up for the game. And we're seeing Sebastian Haller starting yet again. What do you make of Haller himself? He was in form in Europe, and despite scoring a goal, he still hasn't really reached the highs that you'd have expected him to reach at this point of the tournament.
Yeah, that's true. He was one of my players to watch for this tournament, and I've noticed that with the way Ivory Coast play, they play more with the wide players. You see Zaha in there, you see Max Guedo in there. They like to attack with such players, and therefore it's not giving Haller the opportunity to shine as the main man up top. But aside that, I believe that Haller would definitely find his form in this tournament. It's just going to take time. He may get a goal in this game. I believe so, because he's one man that I think he's a go-to finisher. And I believe in the coming games, that's if Ivory Coast qualify, he may get goals for them. He's a very good striker.
Quite quickly, before we wrap up, you've seen 14 of the teams play so far in the knockout round, Mali and Equatorial Guinea. From what you've seen so far, are you seeing the winner of the Africa Cup of Nations in there?
In that game, no. No, I'm not seeing the winner coming from there. I believe it will come from the other games. I'm even tipping Gambia to go far. So,
very interesting. Thank you very much, Joel, for joining us. And that's how we'll be wrapping up the sports here on the JoyNews Pulse. My name is Oreko Ampofo.
And as I draw the curtains on the polls this afternoon, I've indeed enjoyed my almost 2 hours stay with you. Up next is Let's Talk Showbiz, so enjoy the rest of our programs.